did it just now.
Did you do it? Okay, now it's live now. You go ahead.
Yeah?
Speak.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda Jai Advaita Chandra Jai Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Reading from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Sanatana Shiksha, Madhya Lila, Sanatana Shiksha, chapter 23. Haro Ratim Vahan Esha Narendranam Shikhamanahi Bhiksham Atan Aripure Svapakam Apivandate. Bharat Maharaj always carried affection for Krishna within his heart. Although Bharat Maharaj was the crown jewel of kings, he was still wandering about begging alms in the city of his enemies. He was even offering respects to Chandalas, low-class men who eat dogs. Chandalas are outcasts in the Vedic social structure, the four Varnas, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra, and then you had certain people who were part of society, but they were considered outcasts. So Chandalas, people who like to eat dogs. And also Yavanas, people who came from other countries, often known as Yavanas. Heard it came from the Greek islands of Iona. The islands are Greek called Iona, and that was the pronunciation changed to Yavana. From Iona to Yavana. So people, the Greeks, they occupied part of society, but they were considered outside of the standard social structure. Krishna Kripa Karipena Dridha Karijane. A fully surrendered devotee always hopes that Lord Krishna will be kind to him. This hope is very firm in him. Na prema shravanadi bhaktir apiva yogo tava vaishnavo jnanam vasubha karma vakyad aho sajjatir apyastiva hina tadika sadhake tvai tatap yachedya mulasati he gopi jana valabha vyatyate haha mad ashaivavam mam. O my Lord, I do not have any love for you, nor am I qualified for discharging devotional service by chanting and hearing. Nor do I possess the mystic power of a Vaishnav, knowledge or pious activities, nor do I belong to a very high caste family. On the whole, I do not possess anything. Still, O beloved of the gopis, because you bestow your mercy on the most fallen, I have an unbreakable hope that is constantly in my heart. That hope is always giving me pain. So that's a verse from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, 1.3.35. Samutkanta haya sada lalasa pradana. This eagerness is chiefly characterized by an ardent desire to associate with the Lord. Tvach chaisavam tri bhuvanad bhutam ityavehi mas chapalam chatava vamama vadigamyam tat kim karomi viralam murali vilasi mugdam mukhambujam udikshitum ikshanabhyam. O Krishna, O flute player, the sweetness of your early age is wonderful within these three worlds. You know my unsteadiness, and I know yours. No one else knows this. I want to see your beautiful, attractive face somewhere in a solitary place. But how can this be accomplished? That's a verse from Sri Krishna Karnamrita. We mentioned that the other day. Krishna Karnamrita was authored by one Bilvamangala Thakur. He, in his early life, was attached to the prostitute. And then he became thoroughly disgusted with himself. First he got a lesson from the prostitute, and then he had some kind of slip-up, right, as we were talking the other day. And then he became thoroughly disgusted with himself and took firmly to the path of renunciation and bhakti. And at some stage wrote the book Krishna Karnamrita.
What was he basically at first? What was he?
I don't know what his profession was, but he was attached to a prostitute called Chintamani.
That means
So when you say what was he was an addict, addicted to a prostitute.
apart from that, what
I don't know what his profession.
status did he have? Okay.
I don't know what his profession was. It's somewhat irrelevant, really.
No, I mean
The-
spiritually, had he achieved something spiritually? I mean,
Not really. I mean, if he was associating with a prostitute like that, then he didn't really have too much spiritual direction in life. I did read somewhere that some description of his previous life where he had been a moral person, a good person, but had committed some transgression in regards to his financial dealings, in regards to the way he made an income. And as a result of that, generated karma, which he had to come back and experience in his next life. How that relates to him developing a weakness and an addiction for this lady of the night, I don't know. And I forget even where I read it, how reliable it is. I might have heard it somewhere in some talk someone was giving. So I can't reference it off the top of my head. But the main point is not really what he was doing for a living. It was the fact that he was in a condition, somewhat a deplorable condition, and he was brought to his senses actually by this lady Chintamani herself, after him battling through a dangerous storm and almost being bitten by a snake, and then her going, if you were able to express such or apply such determination in a search for the Supreme, you would be quickly be successful. And that triggered an epiphany in him, and he embarked on a spiritual path and had a slip up or two, but then in disgust at his own inability to be steady, he thoroughly rejected his previous lusty habits and ultimately became a very respected devotee, highly respected, respected and perfected devotee. And he ended up authoring the book Sri Krishna Karnamrita. It was one of two books that Mahaprabhu, on his tour of South India, he spent 2 years traveling around South India, visiting temples and preaching and teaching Krishna Bhakti, and meeting devotees, etc., and visiting deities' temples. And he collected 2 literatures. One was Brahma Samhita, and the other is Krishna Karnamrita. And it said that he carried Brahma Samhita in his right hand and Krishna Karnamrita in his left hand as he walked back to Jagannath Puri. It doesn't have the same status, even though Mahaprabhu brought it back alongside Brahma Samhita. It doesn't have the same status as Brahma Samhita. When I say that, I don't mean to diminish it. I just mean that it's not as widely circulated, it's not as widely quoted, it's not published as frequently. It's not circulated and promoted and quoted in the same way that Brahma Samhita is. I mean, it's a somewhat different work, but nonetheless, Mahaprabhu brought it back, so that's giving it enough endorsement.
what was the story with the chapter 5 of the Brahma Samhita?
With what?
Chapter 5 of Brahma Samhita.
Well, you mean the Brahma Samhita was originally 100 chapters, and there was 1 chapter extant remaining.
And that was what Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu got. That's it.
Yeah, that's the tradition, says that originally Brahma Samhita was a much larger text of 100 chapters, so presumably about 100 times the size of what it is now. But there's only one chapter remaining, and Mahaprabhu found it in Kerala at the Adikeshava temple and had it immediately copied. So he found it in the temple library, or the priest perhaps introduced it to him, whatever the case, irrelevant. He had it immediately copied, and he brought a copy back with him to Puri and introduced it to the devotees there. And everyone made a copy. It says in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 10 or 11, Mahaprabhu returns to Puri. Chapter 9 would be when he discovers Brahma Samhita in Kerala. And chapter 10, I believe, is his return to Puri. So it should be chapter 10. He has it copied. They all have it copied immediately. And so the Brahma Samhita circulates around the Vaishnav community in Puri and Bengal fairly quickly. Yeah.
They had never
So,
any...
no, it was pretty much hidden until that time. I mean, if it's sitting away in a temple library in South India and Kerala, it's long before the days of the internet, where people would scan it and put it on the internet. Really, pretty much unknown outside of that, imaginally or conceivably outside of that temple and that temple's community. So Mahaprabhu introduced it to the world. Mahaprabhu was ecstatic to find it because it describes Mahaprabhu's conception perfectly. It's quite a wonderful text. It starts, Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarvakarna Karanam. Krishna is the original person. He has a form of concentrated, pure consciousness, eternality, and ecstasy. That's what the components of his form. He is the original person, Ishvara Parama Krishna, the supreme person, supreme original form of God. He has no cause. Anadir Adir, beginningless. He is the cause of all causes, as it's said. Sarva Karana Karanam, or that's Karana. Karana means a cause. So Sarva, he is the cause of all causes. Sarva means everything. So Sarva Karana Karanam, he is the cause of all causes. The original person. Anadir, no beginning. He has no beginning. That's the first verse of Brahma Samhita. Ishvara Parama Krishna. And then it talks about the enlightenment of Brahma, how Brahma is in darkness, and he is enlightened through a visit by Goddess Saraswati, and then by Gayatri, and they deliver him mantras, the Kama Bij and the Kama Gayatri, in that order, respectively. And through repetition of those mantras, he is able to experience the flute song of Krishna and its essential message. He's able to understand the truth of Krishna. And so then it starts with Brahma's prayers to Krishna. You could say, like, the Brahma Samhita itself. If the Brahma Samhita means literally Brahma's prayers, then that's when it starts, somewhat later into the text. Verse 29, I think. It starts, Chintamani prakara sadmasu kalpa briksha lakshavriteshu surabhir avipalayantam lakshmi sahasra satasam brahma sevyamanam govindam adipurusham tamaham bhajami. So it's those verses that we know of as the Brahma Samhita ending, Govindam adipurusham tamaham bhajami. So it says, Chintamani prakara sadmasu kalpa briksha, a description of the spiritual environment in which Krishna lives. And then it goes on to describe in beautiful verses Krishna and his activities and the nature of he himself and his environment, his abode. Anyway, so Krishna Karnamrita was another book brought back with Mahaprabhu from South India. Namagane Sadaruchi Laya Krishna Nam. Due to having great relish for the holy name, one is inclined to chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra constantly. So Mahaprabhu here, if we remember from yesterday, Mahaprabhu is talking about the gradual stages of development of bhakti in the life of a devotee, from a platform of faith through to from that faith to sadhusanga association, and then of course practicing and then the expunging of unwanted tendencies, habits, desires, which is known as anartha nivritti. And then of course once that inner environment has been cleaned, then there's steadiness. Steadiness is achieved. And from steadiness after, then there's ruchi. So Mahaprabhu here is talking about this stage of ruchi. Eagerness. There's eagerness. So as the previous verse, text 30. Samutkanta haya sada lalasa pradana. This eagerness is chiefly characterized by an ardent desire to associate with the Lord. And then the Krishna Karnamrita verse. O Krishna, flute player, the sweetness of your early age is wonderful within these three worlds. You know my unsteadiness, and I know yours. No one else knows about this. I want to see your beautiful, attractive face somewhere in a solitary place. But how can this be accomplished? And then, Namagani Sadaruchi Lai Krishna Nam. Due to having great relish for the holy name, one is inclined to chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra constantly. In fact, Rupa Goswami says later in the next portion, in the Antya-lila of Chaitanya Charitamrita, we'll encounter a verse by Rupa Goswami saying, Tunde Tandavani Ritim Vitanute Tundavali Labdhaye Karna Kroda Kadambani Katayate Karne Buddhibhyas Briham. This is a verse that is describing the effect of pure Krishna Nam, Krishna's name, when it reveals itself in a pure chanta. So it's actual, its true effect. Cheta prangana sangani vijayate sarvendriyanam kritam no jane janita kyadbir amritai krishnati varnadvayi. That in following on from this verse, extending the theme, great relish for the holy name, one is inclined to chant the Mahamantra constantly. Well, Rupa Goswami says in that verse that when the name enters in to the ears, then a person desires millions of ears because it's so tasteful. The experience is so beautiful that a person wants to amplify it and expand it through millions of ears. And when it's vibrated on the tongue, in other words, when someone chants the holy name, they want millions of tongues in order to maximize the pleasurable experience. Sarvendriyanam kritam, the effect is that it stuns the senses, indriya meaning like the internal senses, the faculties of the mind and the body, the indriyas, overwhelms them. The effect is so intense, the experience is so powerful, so profound, that it has a stunning It stuns the senses. A person is stunned with almost like a state of shock, but beautiful shock.
That's for pure devotees. It's for pure...
Yeah, that's the effect of the holy name when it's actually chanted purely. When it's accessed in its purity, and all its purity and power. And no jani janita kiyadbir amritai krishnati varnadvai. It's nectar. No one can describe, calculate, measure the nectar present in the two syllables, Krishna. That's what the last line of that verse says. No jani jarita kiyadbir amritai krishnati varnadvai. Those two syllables, Krishna. The sweetness, the intense, ecstatic sweetness, living in those two syllables, no one can calculate. We'll come across that verse later. That is composed by Rupa Goswami, and he presents these verses too. I'm pretty sure he presents, that is one of some verses that he presents, or that Mahaprabhu elicits from him, canvasses from him, when he visits Puri. So in chapter 19, a couple of chapters ago, known as Rupa Shiksha, we hear of Mahaprabhu's instructions to Rupa Goswami, where yesterday we were talking about how rare bhakti is, how there's so many living entities, and among them some are moving, and then among them some are humans, and among some humans there's people that have a spiritual quest, people that come in contact with Vedic knowledge, people that are able to appreciate the Vedas, people that are able to appreciate or approach the Vedas sincerely, then those that, amongst them, those that are able to appreciate the Krishna conception, and then those that are able to make something of the Krishna conception, i.e. develop real spiritual purity and advancement, and etc. So saying that achievement, that Krishna Bhakti is very rare. That was expressed in the Rupa Shiksha, which is chapter 19. This is chapter 23, so a couple of chapters ago. That was when Rupa Goswami is on his way to Vrindavan. Mahaprabhu meets him. Mahaprabhu is coming back from Vrindavan, meets Rupa Goswami. Sends him on his way to Vrindavan after 10 days of discussion. And then, following Rupa Goswami, comes Sanatana Goswami, also going to Vrindavan on the instructions of Mahaprabhu. And Sanatana Goswami stays for a little longer in the Prayag Varanasi area and receives instruction from Mahaprabhu, which is these chapters we're reading now. And then he goes on his way following his younger brother to Vrindavan. And then at a later date, although they live in Vrindavan then permanently, they visit Puri at a later date. Rupa Goswami visits twice. Sanatana Goswami may just visit once. Maybe twice. Anyway, it doesn't matter so much. But on one of those visits, Rupa Goswami immediately begins composing bhakti literatures, what Mahaprabhu has taught him and instructed him then to put all this on paper, compile it, organize it into literary works. So Rupa Goswami starts that, and when he visits Puri to see Mahaprabhu at some stage later, a few years later, then Mahaprabhu is wanting to see some of his shlokas, some of his verses. And they're presented at that time in Chaitanya Charitamrita, in the Antya-lila. We'll get to it next year sometime.
But from that second meeting, there was no more teachings from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
I'm sure there was, but not formally as such.
Okay.
It wasn't the second meet. The second meeting was Madhya Lila chapter 19. The first meeting was a little earlier, when Mahaprabhu, when he first tries to go to Vrindavan, he goes up through Bengal, he visits his mother, Sachi, in Navadvip. He goes to Kulia and forgives all of those people that had previously held an inimical attitude towards him, such as the student body of Navadvip and some specific offenders such as Gopal Chapal and Devananda Pandit. So there's a pastime of broad amnesty that takes place at Kulia, Koladvip. This is where the Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Mutt is intentionally formed there by Guru Maharaj. So it's known as Aparad Bhanjan Pat. It's a place where Mahaprabhu forgives all of the offences. So he's doing so on his way with the intention of visiting Vrindavan. But he goes further north from there to a place called Ramkeli, and that is the seat of the Muslim king of Bengal. His name is Hussein Shah. And Rupa and Sanatana are ministers in his cabinet. They're the top ministers. Sanatana Goswami is the prime minister, and Rupa Goswami is the finance minister. So they're occupying the top posts of the government of Bengal. And they meet secretly with Mahaprabhu. They hear Mahaprabhu is in town, and they secretly they go and they meet with him, and they fall at his feet. And literally they're putting straws in their mouths, and they're falling at his feet and begging for his mercy, begging to be released from their government life, from their current circumstance. And that, of course, is eventually what happens, with some adventures in between. But that is the first meeting.
Okay. Yeah.
That's the first meeting, and that's like chapter 11 of Madhya Lila. I think sometimes it's difficult to memorize all the chapters and when things happen. I think it's chapter 11. So that's the first meeting, and then the second meeting is chapter 19, which is Rupa Shiksha, or maybe chapter 18. They meet at that time. And then, of course, Sanatan Shiksha, second meeting with Sanatan, and then the third meeting would be Rupa Goswami's first visit back to Puri, and then a fourth meeting because Rupa Goswami goes twice.
Okay.
So, was there Shiksha at that time? Naturally, there would have been, of course, but perhaps in a more informal capacity, because the main, transmission of spiritual knowledge was done during this time, as is covered here in these chapters.
But Rupa Sanatana didn't. Each time they would meet Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they never stayed for too long. For a long time.
Not for so long, probably a few weeks.
And that's it.
Yes.
And it happened a few times in their lives, and that's it.
That's it. Yeah, it's quite amazing, isn't it? It's quite amazing how, and it's illustrative of some good points. Is that you don't need physical association of the Guru. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is acting as their Guru, although they see him as the Supreme Lord. He's acting as their Guru. You don't need physical association. But what you need is to hold the ideal and the spirit of your Guru true and serve that. And that's what they did. They didn't need that. It's quite amazing when we think about it. They have these lives that are deemed highly successful by any standards, by any normal standards of any normal measures. What would normally be deemed success by any measure. They're extremely wealthy. When you read about how they escape from their royal services, they use, or Sanatana Goswami uses a huge amount of money to bribe his way out of prison.
Yeah.
So they're extremely wealthy, and like multi-millionaires at the time. And they occupy high political posts, so they have prestige and power.
Influence.
Yes. And they can get any kind of enjoyment that they want. A person with money and power always throughout the ages can get whatever sensual enjoyment they want. Not that they were indulging as such, but that was open to a person with such social position. And they went from that to living as mendicants, abandoning everything and living as mendicants. And if you read of there, it's not even in the previous one. It'll be in the big one there. But I was just going to reference chapter 19 where it talks. So Kaviraj Goswami talks about how they live very briefly under trees, often sleeping under a different tree every night. So it's not like they find a nice tree and they go, I want to sleep here from now on. I'll build my little little den. Build my little den under the tree. Different tree every night, often. And living on the most basic of foodstuffs. Chickpeas and roti often, and just minuscule amounts. Once or so per day. Maybe a little buttermilk as well. And minimal sleep, a couple of hours. So living these extremely ascetic lives, almost like superhuman asceticism. Not almost superhuman asceticism. Indeed, actual superhuman asceticism. From living lives of high success and luxury that most people could only ever dream of and fantasize about, rejecting all of that. And you'd think, of course, well, okay, that would kind of be understandable if they were living with Mahaprabhu 24/7 and he's their inspiration. Yeah, exactly. They did it all for him. Exactly. But no, they met him and he gave them their instructions and they went and they did that for the rest of their lives. Incredible. It is absolutely mind-blowing. But of course they did, touch base with him, as we've just been talking about. They returned to Puri a couple of times. But then returned to Vrindavan to continue with their services. Mahaprabhu gave them not just... And this is, of course, testimony to the power of spiritual transmission, which is another point there. The first one being that one does not need the physical proximity of one's guru in order to be close to one's guru. Because closeness is not about physical proximity. It may or may not help. Physical proximity may or may not help. Generally, it can help if you've got the right attitude, but it's not essential. What is essential is being close to the teaching, known as the Vani of one's guru. The ethos, what their mood and ethos, if that is cultured, the spirit of their instruction, if that is cultured, then you are close. Ideologically, you are close. Spiritually, you are close. So that is all that's required. That is nourishing enough. And the other point is that spiritual transmission, such as what took place between Mahaprabhu and Rupa and Sanatan, is very powerful. That it is more than just academic education. It's more than just a presentation of the philosophy of Krishna Bhakti. It is that, but it's much more than that. It is also, and this is why I wanted to reference chapter 19, because in there it's described how Mahaprabhu is imparting Shakti into Rupa Goswami. He's empowering him. So he's telling him rationally about the philosophy, about the basic philosophical tenets of Krishna Bhakti, Sambandha, Abhidheya, Prayojan, etc. But he's also empowering him to realize this and to head up his sampradaya, to realize this and represent it for the world.
Were they high devotees in their Muslim religion?
You could say yes, but it was hidden. Oh, you mean as Muslims?
As Muslims, were they...
externally they may have been cooperating with the Muslim government, but how much they were considered to be practicing Muslims or not, I don't know. Okay. I would imagine that externally they were cooperating somewhat, but in situations like that, when there's a kind of a syncretism between religions, where it's a Muslim government, but they've got Hindus working as ministers, but the Hindus have kind of blended in to the point where they've accepted Muslim names. For instance, Rupa Goswami was known as Dabir Khas, and Sanatana Goswami's name was Sakar Malik. So, but how much they had internalized Islam, I imagine probably not so much, because we know them as what are known as Nitya Siddhas, or eternally perfected souls. So, their hearts are always, we could say, spiritually pure. They were seeking Mahaprabhu, even though they were in the midst of a environment in which all materialistic goals and aims were easily achieved and available. The details of how much they were overtly practicing Islam, I don't know. Were they at all? Or maybe they were just, it's kind of like, maybe they were just Islam friendly, so to speak. And they were given names to fit in.
I just don't understand why they suddenly surrendered so instantly to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I was wondering if they had already a devotion,
Yes. Well, as I said, they're considered to be what's called eternally liberated, eternal associates of Krishna.
Okay. Yeah.
They're considered to be gopi in their eternal forms.
Well, I wanted to
as
ask you
as
about
gopis.
gopi. Okay.
Specifically Manjari gopis,
Okay. I didn't.
young girls. Rupa Manjari. So Rupa Goswami is Rupa Manjari, and Sanatana Goswami, I don't recall immediately his Manjari, original Manjari identity. But once that is conceived, then you go, okay, they're mixing with society in this world in some way. But we see it as what's called Leela. So, like a divine play, rather than them being impelled by their karma to come down and experience a certain set of material circumstances and then be liberated from that.
Yeah.
The entire nature of their story is different. If it's seen as them descending as devotees to play a particular service role or a particular leela with Gauranga Mahaprabhu.
Sorry for my question, but I have repetition.
Good questions.
No.
Don't worry. All questions are good. I mean, it's very rare that someone will ask a bad question. So, that's how it's seen. I mean, practically speaking, they were cooperating with the government, the Muslim government of the time. But their hearts were always somewhere else. And of course, they were roped in. They were engaged in that role because of their intelligence and skill, because of their competency. They were only young men at the time, early 20s. Yeah, maybe mid-20s. I mean, Rupa Goswami was born maybe 1490. 1490. So he wasn't too much younger than Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu appearing in 1486. No, that's Sanatana Goswami, maybe 1490. Rupa Goswami a couple of years later. And so when they first meet Mahaprabhu, that's perhaps 1515. 15, 14. How old are they? Early to mid-20s. Not that old. So obviously very brilliant young men engaged in high political posts at that age. But they're from Brahmin families, engaged in the service of the Muslim government. So I imagine, at the risk of speculating a little bit, they're not as in converted to Islam. I imagine it's nuanced when you get a blend of cultures like this, and you get some people that are cooperating with the dominant or the invading, the politically powerful culture. Then they're half and half, aren't they?
No, I mean, or in Hinduism, in their religion.
Well, they're considered those that were cooperating with the Muslim government were considered to be tainted. So Brahmins, for instance, and they came from Brahminical families, were considered to have become impure as a result of their association with the Muslim society. That's how they were considered, to have become impure. And even due to that, we find later, again referring back to their visits to Jagannath Puri, to see Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Due to that, they never ventured to enter the Jagannath temple. The stricture being that non-Hindus were not allowed, or they're still not allowed to enter.
Still now.
You won't get in. You can maybe try, putting on some face paint and getting in. People have tried.
Really? That's hilarious.
Yeah. But they don't understand the spirit of Rupa Goswami, Raghunath Das Goswami. Maybe, did Raghunath Das Goswami go in? Haridas Thakur at least. They didn't try to sneak in. Even though they were more than qualified to get the darshan of Jagannath. They followed the temple regulations. Whereas sometimes Westerners today, they're like, I've got a right to see Jagannath.
They would force
Someone was saying on the internet a couple of years ago, I remember, it's like, let's just get together hundreds and thousands of devotees and start a huge rip-roaring kirtan and just bust our way into the temple. They won't be able to do anything. And I was like, wow, that's such the wrong spirit. The wrong idea of acting in such a way that the Lord will want to see you rather than you forcing your way in through the front door like that song by Peter Gabriel, I'm going to heaven or I'm going to bust in through the front door. And of course, with Jagannath in particular, the whole pastime of Rath Yatra is so special for us Westerners because that's when we get to see Jagannath. We can't see him any other time of the year. So if we were allowed in, then that would be less special for us, the whole Rath Yatra festival, which is already so special to us because of Mahaprabhu's participation in it, as described here in Chaitanya Charitamrita. So back to those points, the physical association with the Guru is not necessary, as is seen displayed in the lives of Rup Sanatan. But holding on to the ethos, the spirit of the Guru is very essential. And also, if one does that, then one not just receives information, philosophy from the Guru, but also spiritual energy. And that is the deeper level which counts. Spiritual empowerment. I'll read a little from Revealed Truth. Srila Bhaktisundar Govindadev Goswami Maharaj. The subchapter is entitled Hope for the Hopeless. And Gurudev is talking here about the general mood of a devotee, but in particular in relation to chanting And he has described previously the famous Chatak bird, who is praying for a drop of rain from the cloud, and he will not take water from any other source, exclusively from the cloud, which is representative of a devotee's exclusive dependence on Krishna. And of course, in addition to that, the cloud, it is said, can produce lightning, which can hit the bird. In other words, we're reminded of the verse Aslisya va paratan panashdumam, the last verse of Shikshastaka, where Mahaprabhu is saying that he's exclusively devoted to Krishna, even if there is some difficulty involved, even if Krishna is rough in the name of delivering his mercy, even if there is some difficulty, or even if you leave me broken-hearted, Mahaprabhu says. So that's the equivalent of the lightning striking the Chatak bird. The attitude of the Chatak bird is that even if the cloud may deliver lightning, still he's only going to drink water from the cloud. So that's descriptive, illustrative of the attitude of the devotee. And this is very high, and it must be developed gradually. It's not like someone can go from zero to hero spiritually overnight. That's very unusual. So this is the pinnacle of Sharanagati, and it's to be held as identified as a goal and worked towards, but it will take a little bit of time generally. It cannot be done overnight, otherwise a person will tend to falter and won't be able to sustain it won't be real, and thus it won't be sustainable. So that's what Gurudev is talking about, that attitude. And this one is called, where were we here? This subchapter is entitled Finalizing Our Relationship. In this way, Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhu shows us how to pray with an attentive and exclusive mood of devotion. It is necessary to chant the Lord's holy name with this mood in order to draw the grace of the Lord to us. We must consider that whatever we need will come to us through our prayer and the Lord's grace, and that through this mood of prayer, the Lord will be inspired to bestow His mercy upon us. When we chant the Lord's holy name, it is not necessary to think or focus on anything. We only need to chant in a prayerful mood of surrender, considering, I am yours and you are mine. Through this mood, our relationship with the Lord will be finalized. At first it will not become final. But by chanting slowly, the source of our chanting, the Lord, will fully acquire our mind. And then, Sarva Sukhamaya Disaha, we will see joy in all directions. The Lord's holy name will enter our heart and give us full nourishment. Supreme kalyan, mangal, benefit, auspiciousness, and so on. Jai Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Gurudev Ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita Shri Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami Ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Ki Jai.
Hari Haraya Nama Krishna Jadavaya Namaha.
Hari Haraya Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha.
Jadavaya Madhavaya Krishavaya Namaha.
Yadavaya Madhavaya Krishavaya Namaha. Nanda Jai Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Rakha Sridhar Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Bhagavan Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada ki jai. Sri Rupanuga Guru Varg ki jai. Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Samaveda Vaishnav Mandala ki jai. Samaveda Bhakta Brinda ki jai. Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat ki jai. Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat West London ki jai. Sri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. Jai Go Premanandi Hari Hari Bo.
Thank you so much for this battle.
Welcome. Thanks for your participation.